Well, on my current boat, I used Seahawk bottom paint last year, and several weeks ago I pulled the boat for a short haul. The bottom looked like new, but the prop and shaft were just covered with barnacles. Well, I'm taking on a new project boat in anticipation of selling my current boat, and I had so much success with Seahawk, why change? And I'm going to be using the Tough Stuff barrier coating and one of the bottom paints. Now, I'm not sure which bottom paint yet. I'm going to talk with Ed, the shop foreman here at Sailing Emporium. Plus, Seahawk has an online guide to help you choose the right paint. Well, as you can see, this bottom is in bad shape. That's why I'm taking all the old bottom paint on right down to the gel coat. And when you do this, it's advisable to put on a new barrier coat, because in the process, you're more than likely going to remove some of the original barrier coat. And you know, over the years you just get a buildup of paint, and that just kind of masks any problems that might be happening. So the next time you do a short haul, I'd take a good look at the bottom and see if you might be ready for a new barrier coat. Now, here's some of the supplies that we're going to need, and I'm not going to list them all. You can pause the video and see what they are, and get an idea of what you're going to need here. Now, I could be here with the sander and sand all of this down and, use a vacuum sander, but I'd be here for weeks, and I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of sanding pads I would go through. So the better option is sandblasting. Now, here at the Sailing Emporium, they're going to be doing several boats at one time, and that helps hold the cost down a little bit. The advantage of doing the sandblasting is that, first of all, it saves you a lot of time. Second, you get a good clean surface, and you can see if there's any problem areas a lot better than just sanding. So let's see how the sanding process works, and then we'll go through the process of applying the barrier coat and the bottom paint. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a good idea to strip all the old bottom paint off every now and then, maybe like every 6 or 10 years, depending on where and how you boat, because the bottom paint could be hiding some hull issues. When we got all the old paint off this boat, I was amazed at the blisters. There were so many. I had the boat yard do the repairs because I'd be here for weeks on end trying to get all this done. Once the yard was finished sandblasting, they washed the entire boat down. The next step was to repair the hull, all of these things you see behind me. And to get the hull ready for the barrier coating, well, let me back up here. Bottom paint is not waterproofing for your boat. If you keep your boat in the water year-round and don't apply new barrier coating now and then, this is what could be happening to you. Okay, so the next step is to thoroughly clean the hull of the sanding dust and whatever else is on there. Now, we use the Seahawk 2044 cleaner. And the Tough Stuff barrier coating that I'm going to use is a 2-part epoxy with a moderate amount of pigment, to make it easier to see where you've already applied the paint. Now, although I've read the instructions, I still like to check with the experts. So I'm going to go over to the Sailing Emporium here and check with Ed, the service manager, to make sure I've got this process fine-tuned and doing it the right way. Hey, talking about the expert, here comes Ed right now. Hey, Ed.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good, good. All right, so now the boat's, we got to do some sanding yet. What's our next step here?
Yeah, the next step here would be to sand all these areas where we did all the filling. You want to at least get it down to 80 grit all the way around the boat and get everything a nice smooth surface for the barrier coat to start going on.
Okay, now on the barrier coat itself, there's 2 parts to this. What do I got to do?
Yeah, it comes in actually I'll make a 2-gallon kit once you mix it up. There's you get 2 gallons. You take both cans, shake them up separately by themselves, and then get a 5-gallon bucket and dump both cans in together and mix it up really well. Usually the best thing to use is one of those drills with the stirring, mechanical stirrer on the drill.
Okay, so just take the drill and mix it up
really well. And then once it is mixed, you have to let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes for an induction time.
Okay, now do I need to mix it in between there?
Yeah. Stir it up every few minutes while you're sitting there waiting for the induction time for the 30 minutes.
Okay,
So
now how long do I have to work with that?
you have about 2 hours.
Oh, so I'm all right
Yeah,
then.
you're okay.
I'm all right
It's not
then.
a big rush. Yeah, you got plenty of time to coat the bottom.
Okay, so then I put one coat on, and then do I put another coat right away?
The first coat and the second coat, it's not the time is not as essential as what the second and third coat. You can go a day in between the first and second coat.
Okay.
It's the second and third coat, and then actually the last coat of barrier and the first coat of bottom paint is what you want to have just a few hours in between. What you want to do is stick your finger in here, and if it's still a little tacky but doesn't come off on your finger, then you're ready to go ahead and start painting, putting the paint on.
Okay, so as soon as I get done with this, we'll mix up a gallon or 2 gallons.
Right.
I put the first coat on, then the next day I'm going to come back and put the second coat on?
Or you could do it later on in the afternoon. If you get a coat on in the morning, you could do the second coat in the afternoon.
Okay.
And that way the next day you could do your third coat of barrier and then get your first coat of bottom paint on, all, within a few hours of that.
Okay, so I think that's what I'm going to try and do.
Yes, yeah.
Now, because this is an epoxy, do I take the tape off every time I put a coat on?
No, I think what they recommend is if you're going to do 6 coats of bottom paint and barrier together, put 6 layers of tape on, and then after your first coat of barrier coat, pull off a layer of tape. Second coat, pull off a layer of tape until you're down to your 6th coat, and then pull off the last tape after the last coat of bottom paint.
Okay, so then that way it's not sticking to everything, and I got to scrape it off.
And also, if you get too much on there, and if a barrier coat gets really hard, when you pull it back off, if you wait too long, it could pull some of the barrier off with the tape.
Okay.
Could peel it off. So
all right.
That's
now,
the best way.
so I'm using the Seahawk Tough Stuff for the barrier. What are you recommending I use for my bottom now?
I would go with the Seahawk Q coat.
Okay.
If you're going to get 3 coats of bottom paint, which is what we recommend, do the first coat in say if you're going to have a black bottom when you get done, do the first coat in a red or green. Something that'll show so that when the last 2 coats of bottom paint start wearing away, you'll see the blue or the green or red underneath it. Then you know it's time to put another coat of bottom paint on it.
Now that's something I never thought about. See guys, this is why we come and talk to the experts. Okay, all right, well I guess I'm just about ready to start painting pretty soon.
Yeah, as soon as we get some sanding done, and we're ready to start putting some bottom on it.
Very good. Ed, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
All right, see you later. Now here's a couple other pointers. When you're doing the painting, don't paint right up to the jack stands, because then you're going to get a buildup, and then that'll have to be sanded off later. So leave a little bit of area around the jack stand. And talking about the jack stands, it's advisable to have the yard move the jack stands. Now you probably could do it, and I see a lot of people doing it, but if something goes wrong and the boat falls, you don't have insurance, the boat yard does. Here you'll notice when the boatyard moved the jack stands, they put a piece of like wax paper between the jack stand and the hull of the boat so that the jack stands don't pull off or rub the new barrier coat and the new bottom paint that you put on. It's a great idea. Alright, there we are. We're finished. The bottom looks great. Got the barrier coat on. You know, and earlier I'd mentioned how I'd used Seahawk on my present boat. Well, actually, I've used Seahawk for I don't know how many years, probably 12, 13 years or more. I've never been disappointed in it. In fact, many of the marina owners I know use Seahawk on their boats. So what does that tell you? And at your boatyard, if they say, oh, we use such and such, we don't use Seahawk, remember, you're the one paying the bill. Demand the best, ask for Seahawk.